What happens when the industry that once rolled out a red carpet for you now avoids you like a scandalous headline? That's exactly what Meghan Markle is facing, and not even her royal title could save her this time. Because this isn't just a rumor swirling around the Hollywood grapevine. It's official. Amazon MGM Studios, one of the most powerful names in entertainment, has just walked away from Meghan Markle. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. Her contract? Cancelled. Quietly. Strategically. And here's the kicker. It wasn't because of poor ratings. It wasn't because of creative differences. It wasn't even because of budget issues. It was because no one wanted to work with her. Not one major actress. Not one major actor. Not one bankable name was willing to share the screen with the Duchess. And it all came to a head when Lily Collins, Netflix darling, Hollywood it girl, and star of Emily in Paris, was offered a high-profile role alongside Meghan in a newly developed Amazon series. Her response? 2 words, absolutely not. She didn't yell. She didn't release a statement. She didn't even post a cryptic Instagram story. She just declined. Flat. Cold. Final. And from there, the unraveling began. Because Lily wasn't the only one saying no. She was just the first to say it out loud. But why does this matter now? Why should anyone care that a former royal and ex-actress lost a deal in a city known for ditching scripts faster than bad first dates? Because this time, it's not just about one canceled show. It's about a pattern, a shift, a growing wall of silence around Meghan Markle in the very industry she thought she'd conquered next. And make no mistake, this isn't just a Hollywood fallout. This is a full-blown cultural reckoning. Think about it. How does a woman who was once hailed as a feminist icon, celebrated for escaping the palace, championed for telling her truth, suddenly become the woman no one wants to collaborate with? Not writers, not directors, not actors, not even PR teams. What's happening behind closed doors that made even the most risk-hungry studios, like Amazon MGM, decide that Meghan Markle simply wasn't worth it anymore? And why does the name Lily Collins keep popping up as the unlikely trigger for this entire collapse? Because let's be clear, Lily didn't cancel Meghan's career. She just refused to co-sign it. And that refusal? It sent shockwaves through Amazon's boardrooms, Meghan's inner circle, and the elite Beverly Hills dinner tables where power moves are whispered between dessert and digestives. So in this expose, we're going deep. This isn't some surface-level tabloid fluff. This is a play-by-play autopsy of how Meghan Markle's dream of Hollywood stardom, version 2.0, died before it ever really lived. We'll take you inside Amazon's greenlighting process, inside Meghan's private pitch meetings, inside the whispered warnings agents are now giving their clients about working with her. And yes, we'll take you inside the moment Lily Collins looked at the offer, looked at the script, looked at the star attached, and walked away. But let's rewind for a second. Because this story didn't start at Amazon. It didn't even start with Lily. It started with ambition, with a calculated plan. You see, after that blockbuster Netflix deal, yes, the one that gave US Harry and Meghan and that infamous Spotify flameout, Meghan had her eyes set on something bigger. Scripted television. Not documentaries. Not podcasts. Not animated content about feminist frogs or whatever Archwell Audio was cooking up. We're talking high-end, prestige, award-bait drama. She wanted a role, a script, a character she could sink her teeth into, a new identity, something that would finally make Hollywood see her not as the ex-royal, but as the actress turned power player. And Amazon MGM? They bit. At first, there were whispers of a limited series. Meghan was to be both star and executive producer. There was talk of female empowerment, a global storyline, even potential crossover into film if things went well. One Amazon insider allegedly described it as Suits meets Scandal with a royal twist. It was bold, ambitious, and in Meghan's mind, it was already a sure thing. But here's the thing about Hollywood. It loves ambition, until it doesn't. Because ambition, without the relationships to support it, without the collaborators to believe in it, without the cast to execute it, is just a pitch deck with no teeth. And that's exactly what this project became. But before we get to the internal memos, the panicked calls, the growing whispers of uncastable, let's look at the timeline. Let's examine how a high-profile studio like Amazon MGM goes from fully developing a Meghan Markle vehicle to ghosting her faster than a first date who Googled her too late. Because the clues were there from the start. The red flags weren't even subtle. Writers came and went. Directors politely declined. Production timelines kept shifting. Budget meetings got awkward. Amazon allegedly began asking questions like, is she really the lead here? Or the liability? What's our insurance premium if there's PR fallout? Can we get someone else attached to anchor the cast? And then came the casting call. Amazon wanted to surround Meghan with A-list names. They wanted critical darlings, faces that award committees loved, people with real fan bases. Enter Lily Collins. Charming. Talented. A Netflix powerhouse with a growing list of serious roles. The daughter of a music legend, but a star in her own right. She was approached to play the foil, the rival, the complicated best friend. Different versions were floated. The script was flexible. The money was right. The exposure? Massive. Lily read the pitch. She heard who was involved. She paused. And then she declined. No tantrum. No public shade. Just a quiet no. But in Hollywood, a no like that speaks volumes. Because Lily wasn't just rejecting a role. She was rejecting the energy behind it. The narrative. The person. And when a name like Lily Collins walks away, studio execs don't just shrug it off. They ask why. They wonder, who else feels this way? They start making calls. And suddenly, what was once a greenlit project becomes radioactive. Meghan, of course, tried to contain it. Sources say she made calls, sent emails, reached out to people she thought she could count on. But there's a rule in Hollywood no one ever says out loud. If too many people say no to working with you, it doesn't matter what your resume says. You're done. And Amazon, they didn't send a press release. They didn't announce the cancellation. They just moved on. One exec described it as strategic silence. Another source allegedly joked, it's not a cancellation if it never made it past casting. But behind the scenes, Meghan knew. And her team knew. Because once the casting sheet came back with 3 confirmed declines and no replacements, once the writer's room went cold and the internal budget was quietly reallocated, it was over. And the worst part? Everyone was pretending like it had never existed. So how did Meghan react when she found out? What did she say privately about Lily Collins? And how did this quiet cancellation lead to a wave of industry insiders blacklisting her from future projects? The answers are as shocking as the silence that followed. But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. What do you do when the world stops watching you? For Meghan Markle, the answer was simple. You make them look again. Or at least, you try. Because before the collapse, before the headlines about Lily Collins refusing to work with her, before the quiet cancellation and the mounting blacklists, there was hope. A plan. A comeback. Carefully crafted. Painstakingly packaged. Pitched at the highest levels of Hollywood. And at the center of that comeback? One deal. One contract. One studio. Amazon MGM. Yes, the same studio behind Oscar-winning films. Billion-dollar franchises. Prestige dramas. The kind of place that could crown a new Hollywood queen if she played her cards right. And Meghan? She believed she was holding a royal flush. But here's the question. Did she misread the table? Or was the deck stacked against her from the beginning? Let's go back. The deal began in whispers, long before any press release was issued or project details were leaked. Insiders say the initial conversations with Amazon started as early as late 2022, months after Harry and Meghan dropped on Netflix and set streaming records, but also stirred polarizing reactions across the industry. On paper, Meghan had what studios wanted. Global name recognition, an existing audience, a politically engaged persona, a history as a working actress. Suits wasn't Shakespeare, but it had fans. And most importantly, a compelling redemption arc. She wasn't pitching herself as the villain anymore. She was pitching herself as the visionary. The comeback kid. The misunderstood creative. The woman who had once been silenced, now ready to reclaim her voice through scripted television. And Amazon MGM listened. Executives, especially the younger ones, were intrigued. Meghan was polarizing, yes, but so was profit. And in a streaming war where content was king, being boring was the only real sin. According to one insider, Meghan's team presented a prestige drama package. A limited series. Meghan is both star and executive producer. A female-led ensemble. Heavy themes, international conflict, identity, betrayal, family secrets, and yes, a few palace parallels that only the sharpest viewers would catch. It was described as edgy but elegant. Think Big Little Lies meets Bodyguard meets The Crown, with Meghan at the center. A woman on the run. A diplomat's wife turned whistleblower. A story of lies, loyalty, and survival. But here's where it gets complicated. Because while Amazon liked the idea of Meghan as a producer, there was one sticking point. She wanted a star. And not just in a supporting role. Not as a cameo. She wanted the lead. She wanted screen time, dialogue, awards consideration, the full Hollywood comeback package. Was that a mistake? Well, here's the contradiction that haunted the deal from day one. Meghan Markle, the celebrity, was high value. Meghan Markle, the actress, unproven, out of practice, possibly rusty. And in an industry where billions are wagered on viewer retention, critical reception, and social media chatter, attaching the wrong lead actress can tank a project before a single frame is shot. But Meghan wouldn't budge. She saw this as her vehicle. Her Argo. Her Aaron Brockovich. Her post-palace renaissance. Amazon, pressured by the buzz around her name and the chance to court royal-level publicity, agreed, on paper. But internally, questions were already forming. Writers were hired, then rehired, then replaced. One source said the script went through 6 revisions in under 3 months. Producers described creative friction. Meghan allegedly had strong opinions about wardrobe, tone, character backstory, even dialogue. She wanted the show to feel authentic. But only her version of authentic. According to a development team member, it was like working with someone who thought she was Shonda Rhimes, Phoebe Waller-Bridge, and Reese Witherspoon rolled into one, but with none of the actual experience. Still, Amazon pressed on. They needed a win. Netflix had its Harry and Meghan moment. HBO was riding high off Succession, and Apple TV had just scooped up another award darling. Amazon was desperate for buzzy content that made headlines beyond the entertainment pages. And that's where the next phase began, casting. Because a Meghan-led series could only work if the rest of the cast was stellar. They needed balance, gravitas, range, star power. And that's when the name Lily Collins was floated. Not just because of her Emily in Paris success, but because Lily had something Meghan didn't, Hollywood goodwill. She was respected, low drama, professional, a proven lead. And above all, safe. Amazon saw the pairing as genius. Meghan represented risk. Lily represented stability. Together, it could have worked. But here's the twist. When Lily was approached, she didn't hesitate. She said no. And not just no, a hard no. Why? That's where things get murky. Because officially, Lily never spoke publicly. She didn't shade Meghan. She didn't leak texts. She simply declined. But insiders paint a very different picture. Apparently, Lily's team had concerns. About the script. About the project's timeline. But more than anything, about the Meghan factor. They'd heard the stories. The Spotify mess. The staff turnover at Archewell. The quiet friction at Netflix. The ghosted executives. The difficult label whispered at parties. One source claimed Lily's manager warned, this project could be career kryptonite. If it goes south, it won't be Meghan who takes the fall. It'll be the people around her. And in Hollywood? That kind of risk isn't worth the paycheck. Amazon panicked. They assumed Lily would say yes. That Meghan would soften her public image by sharing the spotlight. That 2 women leads would generate a feminist PR wave. But when Lily walked, others followed. Within weeks, 2 more actresses declined roles. Then a director backed out. A producer quietly reassigned themselves. A costume designer took another gig. Suddenly, Amazon's sure thing was bleeding talent. And Meghan? She didn't see it coming. She thought the buzz was good. She thought Amazon was still behind her. She even started scheduling interviews, prepping soundbites for a new chapter narrative. But behind the scenes, Amazon was unraveling the deal. And that unraveling would lead to a single, damning document that would never be released to the public, but would haunt Meghan's team for months. A memo. Internal. Cautious. Surgical. One that posed a simple but devastating question. Is this project worth it? And that memo would do more damage than any headline, podcast flop, or royal feud ever had. Because it marked the beginning of the end, not just for the Amazon deal, but for Meghan's entire Hollywood second act. But we'll get to that memo in the next chapter, because what came after it would send Meghan Markle into full-blown damage control, and no one was prepared for how far she was willing to go. What does it say about a person when the sweetest actress in Hollywood refuses to work with them? Not hesitates, not negotiates, not asks for script changes, just refuses. Flat, silent, cold. That was the shockwave Lily Collins delivered the moment her name appeared on the casting proposal next to Meghan Markle's. And here's the twist. Lily didn't even need to think about it. She took one look at the offer, one look at who the lead was, one look at the projected PR strategy, and quietly told her team, "Not happening." 2 words. 2 words that would rattle Amazon MGM Studios, humiliate Meghan's camp, and ignite a chain reaction that exposed something Hollywood insiders had whispered for months. Meghan Markle wasn't just controversial. She was becoming uncastable. But let's slow down. Let's rewind. Let's walk through the moment this decision began brewing, long before Amazon even approached Lily. Because Lily Collins didn't reject Meghan out of nowhere. She rejected the chaos that followed Meghan like a shadow. And in Hollywood, shadows matter. The setting, a casting strategy built on hope and denial. After weeks of stalled development and failed attempts to secure a director, Amazon MGM knew they needed a miracle. They needed a co-star so respected the public would overlook the show's biggest gamble, Meghan as the lead. Someone with pristine reputation, critical acclaim, social media charm, 0 scandals, international reach, and, most importantly, the ability to elevate any project. And who fit that bill better than Lily Collins? She was perfect, flawless, even. She was the anti-Meghan in every sense. Stable, not polarizing. Adored, not divisive. Collaborative, not controlling. Consistent, not chaotic. Her addition would have transformed the project from risky to prestigious. At least, that's what Amazon hoped. But they made one fatal mistake. They assumed Lily Collins would see Meghan Markle as an opportunity. Instead, she saw her as a liability. How Hollywood sees Lily Collins, and why her no mattered. To understand the impact of Lily's refusal, you have to understand who Lily is behind the scenes. Not the Instagram-perfect outfits. Not the bubbly Emily in Paris persona. Not the daughter of Phil Collins headline everyone loves to mention. But the real Lily. The Lily who is known as a director's dream. The Lily who arrives early, stays late, and doesn't bring drama on a set. The Lily who doesn't leak stories or leak emails or leak tears to the press. The Lily who has built a golden reputation in an industry that eats reputations for breakfast. Hollywood likes Lily Collins not because she's a star, though she is, but because she's safe, reliable, professional, consistent, low ego, 0 scandals, no messy breakups, no feuds, no leaked texts, no diva moments, no brand-damaging headlines. She's the kind of actress you can anchor a series around and sleep at night knowing she won't tank the PR tour halfway through. Meghan Markle? The complete opposite. Even before the royal exit, Meghan already had a cloud of whispers trailing her. She's demanding. She's controlling. She clashes with everyone. She tries to rewrite scripts. She wants approval on wardrobe, camera angles, even other people's lines. After the royal exit, that cloud turned into a storm. So Lily's refusal hit Amazon like a truck. Because when the safest actress in Hollywood says no to you, it makes everyone else reconsider saying yes. The pitch meeting that went nowhere. According to insiders, Amazon approached Lily through her agents with enthusiasm. They pitched the project as a female-led prestige drama, a psychological thriller, global distribution, awards potential, huge promotional budget, generous paycheck, and, most importantly, the chance to work alongside Meghan Markle in her long-awaited Hollywood return. That last line was the problem. Because the moment Lily saw the name Meghan Markle, the energy shifted. She didn't smile. She didn't frown. She didn't react dramatically. She just closed the pitch deck and said, "I'm not interested." Her agent pressed, "You should at least read the script." Lily shook her head. "It's not the script. It's the partnership." And there it was. The quiet truth no one in the room wanted to say aloud. Working with Meghan Markle wasn't just a creative choice. It was a risk. Why Lily said no? the real reasons. Here's where the contradictions become fascinating. It wasn't that Lily didn't believe in female-led stories. She does. She champions them. It wasn't that she disliked Meghan personally. They barely know each other. It wasn't even the content of the series. The storyline was strong enough. What Lily rejected was the impact of attaching her name to Meghan Markle's. Meghan's reputation for drama, her feud with the royal family, the backlash from public opinion, the Spotify disaster calling her not relatable, the Netflix tension, her reputation for controlling narratives, the growing whispers that she's difficult and unpredictable, and worst of all, the risk that Meghan's involvement could sink the entire project. According to one insider, Lily's team said a project with Meghan would become about Meghan, not the story, not the cast, not the art. It would be overshadowed from day one. What do you do when people start backing away from you, and no one will tell you why? If you're Meghan Markle, you don't sit still. You push. You demand answers. You make calls. And when that doesn't work, you escalate. Because that's exactly what happened after Lily Collins walked away and the casting sheet began looking less like a roster and more like a rejection list. Meghan didn't retreat. She retaliated. And what she did next wasn't just bold, it was a calculated gamble. She called Amazon directly. Not through her agent. Not through Archwell. Not through her attorneys. She called the executive overseeing the series herself. It was supposed to be a power move. It became the breaking point. The phone call that changed everything. Sources inside Amazon say the call came out of nowhere. One of the executive producers, already juggling multiple greenlight meetings and quietly trying to de-escalate the Meghan problem, got a text from their assistant mid-afternoon. Meghan Markle wants to speak directly. Says it's urgent. Within an hour, the call was happening. The energy? Off. From the very first second. Meghan wasn't calling to ask what was wrong. She was calling to assert control. According to someone briefed on the call, she opened with something like, "I know there's been some hesitation on casting, but I want to make it clear, this story matters. This project matters. And I expect it to move forward as planned." That tone, part conviction, part threat, didn't land well. Especially not with an executive team that had just spent weeks trying to convince A-listers to share the screen with her, and failing. And then Meghan did something that made jaws clench. She played the royal card. Allegedly, she reminded them, twice, that she was still one of the most talked about women in the world, that her platform was global, and that few other actresses could generate that level of engagement on day one. The subtext was clear. You need me. I don't need you. But here's the Hollywood contradiction Meghan didn't anticipate. In royal circles, that kind of status matters. In Hollywood, it makes you look desperate. The silent problem no one wanted to voice. As soon as the call ended, there was a shift inside Amazon. Not explosive, not immediate, but quiet, deliberate, final. The exec who took the call, reportedly one of Meghan's earliest champions in the studio, walked into a strategy meeting with other stakeholders and said, "She's going to make this impossible." And that's when the elephant in the room, something nobody wanted to put in writing, finally got a name. Uncastable. Not because she lacked talent. Not because she lacked fame. But because no one wanted to act with her. Let that sink in. An actress with one of the most recognizable names on earth. Couldn't find a single co-star. That's not bad luck. That's a red flag. What uncastable really means in Hollywood. To the outside world, uncastable might sound like a career death sentence. But inside the industry, it's more nuanced and more brutal. It doesn't mean you're blacklisted. It means the equation doesn't add up anymore. Here's how it works. Your name must bring more value than baggage. You must elevate a project, not weigh it down. You must attract other talent, not repel them. You must make casting easier, not impossible. If the opposite happens, studios begin asking uncomfortable questions like, are we greenlighting a show or a PR problem? That's the phase Meghan had entered, and she didn't even know it yet. Because the people around her weren't telling her the truth. Meghan's team, loyal, but frightened. At this point, Meghan's team, her advisors, reps, PR handlers, were split into two camps. Camp 1. The loyalists who kept feeding her curated updates, blaming Amazon for the delays, and suggesting it's just internal politics. Camp 2. The realists who saw the collapse coming and were terrified to tell her. One former assistant, who later left Archwell quietly, allegedly described the atmosphere as a bubble of self-preservation. Everyone knew the project was on life support, but no one wanted to be the one to pull the plug in front of her. So Meghan kept pushing forward. Pitching interviews, reviewing wardrobe concepts, even booking time with a personal acting coach to sharpen her on-screen intensity. She truly believed this project was still happening. But Amazon, they'd already started phasing her out. The emails that didn't get replies. Here's where things turned eerie. Meghan's team continued emailing Amazon's production coordinators, trying to finalize casting timelines, crew hiring, location scouting. At first, they got polite replies. "We're in flux. We're realigning internal resources. We'll circle back next week." Then silence. No replies. No scheduling. No updates. Meghan's team followed up again. Twice. Then a third time. Nothing. Amazon had ghosted the Duchess of Sussex. Not out of malice, but out of strategic avoidance. They didn't want to send a cancellation email. They didn't want to deal with a public tantrum. They didn't want the press firestorm that would come with Amazon cancels Meghan Markle's show. So they did what Hollywood does when it wants to make someone disappear, quietly. They stopped answering the phone. The reputation risk matrix. Around this time, Amazon's legal and PR teams began compiling what one source called a reputation risk matrix. It wasn't public. It wasn't formal. But it was real. It measured the potential fallout of continuing to work with Meghan Markle versus the potential benefit. The summary? Benefit. Possible streaming spike. Short-term buzz. Royal-adjacent press cycle. Risk. Talent flight. Creative instability. Negative media coverage. Perceived entitlement. Internal friction. Association with difficult branding. The result? Too risky. Not worth it. The industry reaction and Meghan's growing isolation. As the Amazon deal quietly collapsed, the news began to circulate, informally, across industry circles. Not as a press release, not as a public scandal, but as a cautionary whisper. She couldn't get anyone to say yes. Lily walked. So did others. The execs stopped returning calls. It's over, but no one's saying it. And that whisper became a current. A current that began sweeping Meghan out of the zone of serious contenders and into the zone of people studios don't want to deal with. You know how some actors have that Oscar buzz that follows them? Meghan was developing the opposite. Casting chill. The invisible frost that falls over every project her name gets attached to. Because if you're an up-and-coming actor or a working actress, do you really want your big break to be a Meghan Markle vehicle? Do you want to risk being overshadowed by drama that has nothing to do with the script? Do you want your name trending next to diva behavior, creative control issues, and royal feud? Of course not. And Hollywood knew it. The contradiction Meghan never saw coming. Here's the twist that adds emotional weight to all of this. Meghan genuinely believed she was doing everything right. She believed her fame guaranteed relevance, that her activism guaranteed admiration, that her titles guaranteed longevity. But the one thing she forgot? In Hollywood, you can't perform your way out of bad reputation. You have to collaborate your way out of it. And Meghan wasn't collaborating. She was commanding. And that's a currency that only lasts so long before the checks start bouncing. The cliffhanger. As Amazon prepared to kill the project quietly, a few final actions had to be taken. Calls, closures, conversations no one wanted to have. But Meghan? She wasn't backing down. In fact, she was about to pivot to her next play, a dramatic attempt to salvage her brand. She thought Netflix would give her a second chance. She thought she still had leverage. She thought she could spin this. But what she didn't know was that the industry had already moved on, and the next studio she approached would humiliate her even further. It didn't leak. It wasn't announced. It wasn't intended to be seen outside a handful of executives. And yet, it was the most consequential document of Meghan Markle's post-royal career. The internal memo. A few paragraphs. A couple of bullet points. No dramatic language. No scandalous accusations. But its message? Devastating. Because when Amazon MGM Studios circulated that confidential internal assessment, detailing the growing risks of continuing Meghan's project, they weren't just talking about one deal. They were, in essence, deciding her fate in Hollywood. Quietly, strategically, without ever having to say the words out loud. And Meghan had no idea it existed. Let's break down what was inside that document. What it said what it implied, and why it sent ripple effects through boardrooms, talent agencies, and Meghan's inner circle alike. Because the truth is, this memo didn't just kill a series. It exposed a fundamental problem no one dared admit publicly. Meghan Markle had become too difficult to protect. The setup, when whispers become action. Amazon MGM had a problem. A high-profile actress, royal adjacent, globally recognizable, had pitched them a show. She wanted to produce it, star in it, shape it, but no one wanted to work with her. No one wanted to write for her. And now, no one at the studio even wanted to take her calls. The typical Hollywood move in this situation? Just ghost the project. Let it fade. Hope the press never asks. Move funding elsewhere. But Meghan wasn't typical. She had lawyers. She had press contacts. She had a very public brand. So if Amazon dropped her cold, they risked becoming part of the story, the villain in another Sussex narrative about betrayal and silencing, which meant they needed a paper trail, something internal, something strategic, something that justified their slow, deliberate retreat. Enter the memo. The memo, quiet words, loud consequences. According to two independent sources familiar with the contents, the memo wasn't flashy. It wasn't designed to attack Meghan. It was designed to protect Amazon. It was titled something innocuous. Talent Risk Overview, Confidential. But what followed was anything but. It outlined 6 major concerns, each one short, clinical, and carefully worded. Casting aversion. Multiple high-profile talents declined offers to join the project after Meghan's attachment was confirmed. Concerns cited included reputational risk, creative friction, and public backlash. Creative overreach. Reports from producers and writers cite an unusually high level of interference from Meghan during early development. Suggested revisions exceeded typical talent input and slowed progress. Public perception metrics. Social listening data reflects a significant polarization in audience sentiment. Projected interest to dislike ratio exceeds 2-to-1 in multiple target demos. Legal sensitivities. Concerns regarding public statements and litigious response patterns observed in previous partnerships, e.g. Spotify, Netflix. High exposure if project is later subject to reputational dispute. Market positioning. Audience research suggests consumer fatigue around Sussex-branded content. Declining ROI metrics from past Sussex-associated properties noted. Studio association risk. If project were to implode mid-production or draw public criticism, studio could become the focus of reputational backlash. No high-profile studio currently confirming interest in alternative Meghan-led projects. Each point ended with a chilling phrase, recommending pause on forward development until reputational alignment improves. Reputational alignment. That's Hollywood speak for. She's not worth the headache. The fallout. Who saw it, who acted, and who backed away. The memo didn't leak to the public. But it didn't have to. Because within a week of circulation, doors began quietly closing on Meghan everywhere. Some of the names who saw it include Amazon's legal counsel, executive vice presidents in charge of original programming, 2 major talent agency partners, a Netflix liaison who reportedly asked to see the document out of courtesy after rumors swirled. At least 1 PR crisis management firm. None of them forwarded it. None of them made a fuss. But the impact was unmistakable. Meetings were canceled. Calls went unanswered. Studio responses became vague and noncommittal. Meghan's name was becoming radioactive. And still, no one told her. Meghan's state of mind, denial, then confusion. At this point in the timeline, Meghan was still convinced that Amazon was simply repositioning the project. She reportedly told friends that the delay was due to the massive scale of what she was building. She was preparing new lookbooks, planning early marketing concepts, scheduling wellness sessions and interviews timed to coincide with production. She even reached out to a female director she'd once worked with in Toronto to reinvigorate the energy. The director politely declined. Why? She'd seen the memo. One insider explained it like this. Meghan was in pre-premiere mode. But the project was already dead. She just didn't know it. And when people don't know the truth, they act boldly. That's exactly what Meghan did next. The leak that was never supposed to happen. What no one at Amazon anticipated was the leak. Not the memo, but something worse. An anonymous studio employee, believed to be junior but connected, told a journalist off the record that Meghan's show had been iced. The journalist ran it as a blind item. But the clues? Obvious. Within hours, industry blogs were speculating. Reddit threads popped up. Blind item sleuths went to work. And soon, the headlines began to take shape. Meghan's Amazon deal on ice. A-list actress declines co-starring role with royal star. Hollywood cold shoulder for former Duchess. Meghan's team went into panic mode. They started calling Amazon. No answer. They tried their agency reps. Silence. The walls were closing in, and Meghan felt it. That was when she made the next move in her crisis response plan. A move that would horrify her remaining allies. Meghan's controlled statement that backfired instantly. Desperate to reclaim the narrative, Meghan's PR team floated the idea of a soft clarification, a quote planted in a friendly outlet, hinting that the project was still alive and evolving. The idea? Deflect the cancellation rumors. Buy time. Maintain public dignity. The result? A low-key blurb in an entertainment trade. Sources close to Meghan Markle confirmed that her collaboration with Amazon MGM is still in active development, with new creative partners being explored. Sounds harmless, right? But insiders at Amazon flipped. Because that line about active development, it wasn't true. And now they had a decision to make. Ignore it and let the lie linger? Or respond officially? They chose option C. Privately bury everything. Immediately. Within 48 hours, any remaining development resources tied to Meghan's project were removed from internal schedules. One Amazon employee later described it this way. That quote forced our hand. We had to shut it down completely. Quietly, but absolutely. There was no coming back from that. The emotional fallout and Meghan's realization. It was around this time, insiders say, that Meghan finally understood. Not through an email, not through a statement, but through the sound of silence. A silence that had grown louder and colder by the day. No casting updates. No budget approvals. No producer feedback. No scheduling from the studio. Just nothing. And in Hollywood, that kind of silence means only one thing. You're out. She was no longer the visionary. She was no longer the lead. She was no longer even the conversation. The project? Gone. The memo? Still circulating, quietly, whenever her name appeared on another proposal. And now, it was beginning to follow her to the next studio on her list. Netflix. The cliffhanger. Because as Meghan turned her focus toward Netflix, her last remaining streaming ally, she believed she still had pull. She believed Netflix needed her. But what she didn't know, Netflix had already read Amazon's memo, and someone inside the company was about to forward it to Meghan's own representative. It landed in her team's inbox like a lit match, forwarded quietly, without commentary. No official statement. No warning. Just a subject line that said, "You should be aware of this." Attached, a confidential internal memo. The same one Amazon MGM had circulated weeks earlier. The same one that detailed, in clinical, bullet-pointed language, why Meghan Markle's project had been shelved. Why she'd become a reputational risk. Why top-tier talent wanted nothing to do with her. And now? That memo had made its way to Netflix. Worse, it had been sent to Meghan's own people. There was no ambiguity, no saving face, no spin that could neutralize what was now obvious. Hollywood was turning its back on her. And this time, Meghan couldn't play the victim. She couldn't blame the palace. She couldn't blame the tabloids. She couldn't blame racism or sexism or misogynoir. This wasn't about the crown. This was about credibility. And Meghan Markle was losing hers, fast. The reaction behind closed doors, panic, then denial. As soon as the forwarded memo was read, Meghan's team scrambled. There was a flurry of calls, emergency meetings, Slack channels lighting up with urgent tags. But inside Archwell, the mood was divided. Some staffers were stunned. Others weren't surprised at all. One PR strategist reportedly said, "We were already hanging on by a thread with Netflix. This just cut it." And Meghan? She didn't take it well. She was blindsided, furious, embarrassed. Not just at the memo, but at the idea that it was being passed around like gossip. She reportedly asked her team, "Who would send this to Netflix? Who wants to undermine me this badly?" The answer was obvious. No one needed to. The industry had already done the math. No A-lister wanted to work with her. No producer wanted to babysit her creative control. No executive wanted to defend her to the board. And now, even Netflix. The platform that gave her the biggest public platform post-royalty was reconsidering what she brought to the table. The spiral begins. Meghan grabs the steering wheel. What came next wasn't a measured response. It was a spiral, not the kind that makes headlines overnight. The kind that happens behind polished doors, in frantic calls, and late-night texts laced with stress. Meghan began micromanaging her brand like a drowning person clinging to a life raft. She started pushing her team to schedule positive profile pieces with glossy magazines, reach out to political contacts to float op-eds, pitch new ideas to Netflix within 72 hours, explore rebranding Archwell Studios into a female-led creative hub, contact stylists, photographers, and influencers for fresh image campaigns, even revisit the idea of launching her long-delayed lifestyle blog, TIG 2.0. One staffer described the energy as, "If we can just create one viral win, she thinks the narrative will flip." But here's the contradiction. You can't brand your way out of a reputation problem if the problem is you. The Netflix meeting that changed everything again. Meghan's team quickly arranged a touch base with Netflix execs, part check-in, part damage control, part reassurance. She wasn't going to pitch just one show. She had 3 new concepts to present. A docuseries on radical resilience, a scripted show based on a woman who escapes a cult, and a limited drama about female world leaders, inspired by untold stories. All of it sounded promising, but the energy in the Zoom room? Flat. Because Netflix had seen the memo too. They weren't just dealing with a content creator. They were dealing with a PR liability. And they were cautious. One exec asked, politely, about the Amazon situation. Meghan's response: creative differences. They didn't understand what I was building. Another exec pushed further. Do you think the casting issues were related to the content or perceptions? That word, perceptions. It hung in the air. Meghan reportedly stiffened, then responded, I think there's a fear of powerful women telling their own stories. It wasn't an answer. It was a deflection, and Netflix knew it. Behind the scenes, Netflix loses confidence. After that meeting, a small internal team at Netflix was assigned a quiet task. Evaluate the long-term ROI of continuing to develop projects with Meghan Markle. Not Harry, not Archwell, just Meghan. Their findings weren't optimistic. Harry and Meghan had initial buzz, but viewership dropped steeply after episode 2. Archetypes, Spotify, had imploded. Meghan's name didn't trend for her work, only for controversy. Her content underperformed compared to other Netflix female leads. She lacked creative consistency. She had no commercial hit post suits. In short, she cost more than she delivered. And that's when Netflix began what one insider called a soft distancing. The same move Amazon made. The same move every other studio was now copying. They didn't say no. They just said nothing. Meghan doubles down, the podcast pivot. In a last-ditch move, Meghan returned to a familiar space, podcasting. She believed it was her strong suit. That Archetypes had been ahead of its time. That a season 2, rebranded and repackaged, could repair her public image. She even began reaching out to guests, female CEOs, activists, politicians, actors, anyone with a large platform. But here's the problem. People weren't responding. Not because they hated her, but because they didn't want the baggage. One high-profile female entrepreneur declined and later confided, I'm building a brand. I can't afford to get caught up in another Sussex storm. Even podcast distributors were hesitant. After the Spotify fallout, where company executives had privately accused Meghan of being not relatable and difficult to work with, other platforms were wary. One distributor put it bluntly, we saw what happened to Spotify. Why would we touch that? Emotional toll, the isolation sets in. At this point, Meghan wasn't just losing deals. She was losing trust. People in her own orbit were exhausted. Staff members quit. Strategists took sabbaticals. Even former friends stopped returning calls. The energy at Archwell became tense, uncertain, heavy. Meghan reportedly became paranoid, convinced that someone was leaking things to the press. She rotated assistants, reassigned projects, locked down internal communications. But the problem wasn't leaks. It was reputation. And her reputation was now chasing her faster than her team could clean it up. The twist, a surprising ally reaches out. Just when it seemed like Meghan's damage control spiral had no bottom, someone unexpected reached out. Not to cancel her, not to humiliate her, but to warn her. A former network executive who'd once championed her early Netflix work sent a private message. You're surrounded by people who are afraid to tell you the truth. But this industry has made its decision. They didn't elaborate. They didn't offer help. They just told the truth. And Meghan didn't reply. Because deep down, she already knew. The cliffhanger. As all of this unfolded, a new bombshell was brewing. One that Meghan had no control over. Because someone from her past, someone she thought was long gone, had just been contacted by a journalist. And they were ready to speak. Not about the royals. Not about Archewell. But about what really happened during the casting war. The texts. The meltdowns. The names Meghan called the actresses who rejected her. And this time, there would be receipts. You know it's bad when even the whispers have receipts. Not rumors. Not speculation. Screenshots. Emails. Timestamped text messages. And they weren't coming from anonymous staffers. They weren't coming from disgruntled ex-employees. They were coming from inside the room. The people who were there during Meghan Markle's failed Hollywood resurrection. People who had stayed silent until now. Because once the Amazon MGM memo began circulating behind the scenes, once the Netflix meeting fell flat, once the podcast pitches were getting ignored, something snapped. Suddenly, people who had kept Meghan's secrets were ready to talk. And what they revealed didn't just explain why one deal had died. It exposed a chilling reality. Meghan Markle was being quietly blacklisted. Not with a public statement. Not with a studio-wide ban. But with something far more effective in Hollywood. Strategic silence. No one would cast her. No one would finance her. No one would say it aloud. But they were all saying the same thing. We're not touching that project if she's attached. The first leak, a text thread that lit up the industry. It started with a leaked screenshot. A seemingly mundane text thread between two talent agents discussing potential female leads for an upcoming Amazon project. One message stood out. Clients interested, but she won't do it if MM is involved. Followed by, totally get it. Heard nightmare stories from Redacted.'s team. No upside. The text didn't say Meghan's name outright, but MM wasn't hard to decode. The leak hit a private Hollywood gossip newsletter. Not mainstream, not viral, but to the people that mattered, producers, agents, publicists, casting directors, it was explosive. Because it wasn't about one actress saying no. It was about the fact that everyone already knew why. The blacklist that doesn't exist. On paper, let's be clear. Meghan Markle isn't officially blacklisted. There's no studio document with her name crossed out. No formal email chain that says, don't hire her. No public ban. Because Hollywood doesn't work that way. Blacklisting here is softer, colder, more dangerous. It sounds like she's just not a good fit right now. We're going in another direction. Let's revisit once we finalize casting. Do we have a version of this without Meghan? It looks like projects getting paused when her name is attached. Talent pulling out silently. Emails not being returned. Press junkets never materializing. And worst of all, no one tells the person it's happening. They let them keep believing, keep hoping, keep spiraling. And Meghan? She was spiraling hard. Meghan's response, denial meets defiance. As more whispers surfaced, Meghan's mood reportedly shifted from panic to defiance. She began telling people close to her. They're afraid of strong women. They always have been. She doubled down on her belief that the backlash wasn't about her work ethic, her behavior, or her mounting PR issues. No, she believed it was about jealousy, threat, misogyny, race. And she wasn't entirely wrong. There were certainly industry players who resented her visibility, her confidence, her refusal to play small. But the problem? Those weren't the people saying no to her. The people walking away? The people ignoring her pitches? The people dropping out of her projects? They were women. Award-winning women. Women of color. Progressive women. Feminist women. Her former allies. And they weren't walking away out of envy. They were walking away because they didn't trust her. The compilation email, the burned book of Meghan's stories. Then came the second leak. The one that broke the dam wide open. A document began circulating in private studio circles. Not a public article, not a gossip thread, but a Google Doc. Unofficial title? The MM Stories. It was a collection of short, anonymized anecdotes from casting assistants, junior producers, stylists, and PR managers who had worked with Meghan or tried to. Each entry was short, chilling, petty, professional, all of it brutal. Here are some of the lines that appeared. Asked to redo the call sheet 5 times because she didn't like the font. Fired the first director because he didn't call her Duchess on set. Refused to sit next to a certain co-star at table read. Called her irrelevant. Wanted script changes to ensure her character was always the smartest in every room. Brought in her own stylist, her own photographer, her own lighting director, without informing production. Threatened to walk if creative team didn't remove offensive word. Divorced. It was in a scene about divorce. None of these entries were verified, but that didn't matter, because in Hollywood, perception is reality. And once that document started spreading, Meghan's reality collapsed. The pullouts, a timeline of quiet exits. After the document made its rounds, the dominoes fell fast. One Netflix showrunner rescinded an offer to collaborate. A female director, known for working with high-profile women, ghosted Meghan's team after reviewing project materials. A children's animation producer at another studio reportedly said, "I'd rather develop with a Barbie doll." A former Suits castmate declined a cameo role in a Meghan-pitched reunion special. One agent summed it up. If Meghan's involved, you'll spend more time managing PR than producing the actual show. And no one wanted that. Especially not studios already battling streaming wars, ad revenue drop-offs, and talent strikes. Archwell Studios, a company in freefall. Internally, Archwell Studios began to feel the pressure. Once positioned as the crown jewel of Meghan and Harry's post-royal empire, it now resembled an empty shell. Projects stalled. Employees quit. Budgets slashed. Deals restructured. One insider said, "At one point, we had 14 different projects on the whiteboard. Now, 2. And neither of them have buyers." Meghan's solution? Rebrand. Again, she reportedly floated the idea of renaming the studio entirely, detaching it from the Sussex name. The goal? Create distance from the negative press. But no amount of rebranding could undo what had already happened. Meghan Markle wasn't seen as a creative force anymore. She was seen as a liability. The final sign, the agency shift. Perhaps the most damning blow came from within her own camp. Her talent agency, one of the biggest in the business, demoted her account internally. No announcement. No press release. They just reassigned her. From the A-list strategy division to a special management unit. The same one that handles politically sensitive clients, legacy acts, and reputation recovery cases. For years, Meghan believed her agents were her champions. Now, they were her handlers. And when talent agencies stop championing you, you're done. The irony, the woman who wanted power, had none. This is the emotional center of the collapse. Meghan Markle spent years building an empire outside the palace. She thought freedom meant control, that fame meant influence, that royalty could translate into creative command. But in Hollywood, power isn't about who you are. It's about what you deliver. And Meghan delivered drama, delivered silence, delivered unwatchable scripts, empty seats, and uncomfortable emails. Her name had once lit up headlines. Now it emptied boardrooms. The cliffhanger. And just when Meghan thought she'd hit rock bottom, another Hollywood heavyweight weighed in. An Oscar-winning actress. Someone she once called a mentor. Someone who had defended her publicly during the royal split. Now, she was speaking off-record, and her words would send shockwaves through the industry. "I love Meghan as a woman, but I'd never work with her again. Ever." And that quote was about to go public. It was one sentence, one comment, spoken in private, never meant for headlines. But in Beverly Hills, that kind of thing never stays quiet for long. Because when an Oscar-winning actress, a woman hailed as one of Meghan Markle's early defenders, lets her guard down and speaks candidly, the town listens. Not because it's gossip, but because it's a signal. And in Hollywood, signals travel faster than scripts. That one comment, subtle, restrained, off the record, would land like a nuke. Not because of what it said, but because of who said it, and where she said it, and who repeated it. Because this wasn't just another whisper in the Meghan Markle takedown narrative. This was the moment the room turned. The scene, a private dinner with public consequences. The dinner wasn't press. It wasn't even official. Just a quiet Thursday night table at San Vicente Bungalows. A favorite haunt for A-listers, producers, and old guard power players looking to unwind without the flashing iPhones. Seated around the candlelit table, one legendary actress, name redacted for now, two studio executives, a high-profile screenwriter, a casting director known for curating Oscar-winning ensembles, and a younger indie director whose last film had been Sundance's biggest sale. By all accounts, it was a relaxed evening, until the topic of Meghan Markle came up. Casually, naturally, almost too easily. Someone asked, is she actually still working on anything scripted? Or was that all noise? The actress shrugged, sipped her wine, and said it. Softly, like someone who'd rehearsed the line in her head but never dared say it aloud until now. I love Meghan as a woman, but I'd never work with her again. Ever. The table went silent. Then came the follow-up question. Why? Her answer? Even softer. Because it's never about the work. It's always about her. The fallout, when the tables start talking. That quote didn't stay at the table. Of course it didn't. By the weekend, it had reached a talent agent in New York. By Monday, it was the talk of a late-night writer's room. By Wednesday, it had been paraphrased, badly, into a blind item on 2 entertainment blogs. And by Friday, it had a name attached. The blind item didn't hide much. A major Oscar winner, once a vocal supporter of a certain former royal, has drawn a firm boundary. No future collaborations, under any circumstances. The guesses? Immediate. Julianne Moore, Viola Davis, Reese Witherspoon, Natalie Portman, Jessica Chastain, Kate Winslet. No one could confirm who said it. But the quote? It was real. And for Meghan, the timing couldn't have been worse. Because this wasn't just a professional slap. It was personal. The hypocrisy Meghan couldn't ignore. What stung the most? This wasn't an anonymous troll. This wasn't Piers Morgan lobbing grenades from across the Atlantic. This was a fellow woman in Hollywood. A feminist. A former supporter. Someone who once defended Meghan against the British tabloids. Someone who'd posted a black square on Instagram in solidarity. And now, she was done. Meghan reportedly called a confidant in tears, asking, "Why would she say that about me?" The response? Because she's not the only one who feels that way. She's just the first to say it. And suddenly, Meghan saw it. The people who once clapped loudest were now watching in silence. The pattern everyone else saw, but Meghan didn't. It's not that Meghan didn't notice people pulling away. She noticed. But she misread it. She thought it was temporary. Thought people were just busy. Thought it was political. Thought it was residual royal tension. But that night at San Vicente, it exposed the pattern. Meghan's projects had a shelf life. They started loud. They attracted attention. They got decent funding. They collapsed in chaos. Everyone left quietly. And then, no one came back. Studios, agents, collaborators, former friends, even advocates. The actress's comment was the final straw. Not because of what it said, but because it echoed what dozens of others had whispered. It's always about her. The mirror moment, a brutal realization. Following the backlash, Meghan reportedly asked her team to gather feedback from past collaborators. What she got back was damning. The feedback included phrases like, unclear boundaries, overstepped creative roles. It was meant to be a reset, a clean, strategic play, a public pivot, an elegant clapback to months of headlines, anonymous whispers, and deafening silence from studios that once rolled out red carpets for Meghan Markle. She had been called demanding, difficult, unrelatable, unreliable, uncastable. And now, with her back against the wall, Meghan did what Meghan always does. She tried to control the narrative. She issued a public statement. Not fiery, not defensive, but curated, thoughtful, polished, crafted with intention and phrased with just enough plausible deniability to keep the tabloids chasing their tails. And still that blew up in her face. Because instead of resetting the story, it confirmed everything people feared. The setup, when silence becomes too loud. By this point, the industry had spoken. Amazon MGM, silent. Netflix, cold. Spotify, done. Disney, not even taking meetings. Agents, backing away. Casting directors, laughing off pitches. And Meghan, cornered. Her team was hemorrhaging influence. PR was reacting, not shaping. Even her most loyal press allies were backing off. So, her advisors proposed a reset. A quiet story, a soft quote, planted in a glossy outlet, just enough to stop the bleeding. The idea? Suggest Meghan is still actively developing projects. Position her as focused on family and philanthropy. Downplay the Amazon fallout. Reaffirm her creative vision. Mention Archewell in vague terms to suggest momentum. The execution? A mistake. The statement, polished words, sharp edges. The quote ran in Variety, strategically placed inside a larger piece about female disruptors in Hollywood. It read, Meghan Markle continues to develop bold, impactful stories through Archewell Studios. While some partnerships have evolved, her commitment to storytelling, especially stories centered around women, is unwavering. That was it. No mention of Amazon. No reference to Lily Collins. No clarification on why multiple projects were now dormant. But it was the next line, inserted just one paragraph below, that turned the tide. Industry sources confirm that Markle has taken a step back from scripted acting in order to prioritize producing and creative direction. Sounds harmless, right? To the public, maybe. But to the industry? It was code. How Hollywood translated the statement. Here's what that single sentence meant to people inside the business. She's not getting cast, so now she's pivoting to producer. It's the oldest move in the book. When actors can't book roles, when their name becomes too risky, when the buzz dies, they stop trying to star in